The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The death penalty is again being scrutinized closely, Lewis, because of a condemned Ohio inmate who appeared to gasp several times and took more than 15 minutes to die as he was executed with yet another new combination of drugs never before tried for lethal injection in the United States. It is Martin Luther King Day. We are here in studio. It is a new show, not a rerun, unless it is not January 20th, 2014 today, and then this is a rerun show. But at least today, Lewis, it is a new show, and that we can be very thankful for. Death row inmate Dennis McGuire made a number of loud snorting or snoring sounds during one of the longest executions since Ohio resumed capital punishment back in 1999. In attempting to halt his execution with the new method, his attorneys argued that he was at substantial risk of agony and terror while straining to catch his breath as he experienced a medical phenomenon known as air hunger. Officials used intravenous doses of two drugs, the sedative midazolam and the painkiller hydromorphone, to put him to death for the 1989 rape and fatal stabbing of a pregnant woman, Joy Stewart. The reason why every time, seemingly, there is a new combination of drugs being used is that increasingly the manufacturers of the drugs, some American, some European, say, no. We're not even going to allow our drug into the United States for any reason if you use it to put people down, essentially, for lack of a better term. So every time, Lewis, new combinations are used, and most of the time, the drug manufacturers say, stop using our drugs that way. This is hopefully yet another indication that we need to get rid of this barbaric practice.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, this crime was particularly heinous. And I can't say I feel bad for the guy, but I could easily see this happening to someone who committed no crime, and it has happened.
And separate from that, Lewis, we have to look at, does this violate the constitutional prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment, right? I mean, on one hand, I think it does. There's always this question when we talk about the death penalty of, if it was your 3-year-old daughter that was raped and murdered by this guy, wouldn't you want to see him suffer in this way? However, I feel like that's an irrelevant question, because what an individual may want does not change what the law is and what the Constitution is. And it's shocking that we seem to be ignoring the constitutional prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. And further than that, why is it, Lewis, that the United States is the one country at our level of development that can't seem to just provide everybody with health care? And we're also an outlier in terms of doing this to our prisoners. It's something that also is done less and less in the equally developed world. I just don't understand it.
I don't really understand it either. With regard to the Constitution, it seems like every form of execution we've ever used has been pretty cruel or unusual. I mean, honestly, I think the guillotine is probably the best bet compared to what we've been doing. Compared
to this 20-minute execution, you're probably actually right, that would be both more humane and less cruel. And we're going to keep following it and seeing what happens. More and more states are outlawing or doing away with capital punishment. I've got a really childish exchange to play for you from Nancy Grace's program on Headline News. Nancy Grace is the former prosecutor and I guess like television judge type of person. And she was talking about marijuana legalization. She was interviewing the director of communications for the Marijuana Policy Project. His name is Mason Tvert. And of course, after asking him whether he is paid by them, which it's like, well, that's his employer. Typically, when people work in this country, at least for now, if we continue going in the direction we've been going, maybe people won't be paid for their work anymore. But yeah, that's his employer, so he gets paid for them. And she started talking about why she's against the legalization of marijuana. And this is what she had to say.
Actually, Brad Lamb, the reason I'm against the legalization of pot is because I've seen too many felonies. And I don't mean pot sales or growing pot like this guy up in Connecticut. I mean people on pot that shoot each other, that stab each other,
lives,
strangle each other, drive under the influence, kill families, wipe out a whole family. The first time I ever had a pot case.
You sound like you're from the 1930s.
Okay, so people on pot shoot, stab, and strangle each other. First of all, it has not been demonstrated scientifically that marijuana increases propensity to violence or to shoot or to stab or whatever the case may be. However, the bankruptcy of the argument from people saying that marijuana, there's kind of two bankrupt arguments against marijuana legalization. And remember, I have no personal interest in trying to get marijuana legalized so I can go and buy pot and get high at all. That's not my motivation. It's simply pointing out the bankruptcy of the arguments against. If your argument is that sometimes people who are high commit crimes or drive high, it's a completely bankrupt argument, because there are far more crimes committed by people who are drunk, and that is legal. And it is illegal to drive drunk, and there are punishments for doing that, and you could prescribe similar punishments and bar that. It's already illegal to drive when you're high, and it would continue to be illegal. So that argument is bankrupt, unless you are also advocating the total prohibition of alcohol. The other side, Lewis, would be the health issue. Say, well, why would we legalize something that is bad for people's health, which is in question, right? We could debate whether that's true or not. Let's assume it is. I don't think anybody would argue that the health consequences of marijuana are more negative than those of cigarettes. If you are not advocating the total prohibition and ban of cigarettes, how can you also say that we shouldn't be legalizing and regulating and taxing marijuana? So both arguments completely bankrupt, yet Nancy Grace completely unfazed by that and engaging in a completely just childish interview. And I hesitate to even call it that, Lewis.
Right. The guy actually says to her, "You sound like you're in the 1930s," and that's exactly what it is. It's just total paranoia and a lack of understanding of the issue. She's clearly done no research at all into the effects of marijuana.
We've been talking a lot lately, and we will talk later today with conservative activist Phyllis Schlafly about welfare benefits for poor, lower middle class and lower income individuals. There's a really, really good article on Huffington Post by Bill Quigley, who's a law professor at Loyola University in New Orleans, and also CCR Associate Legal Director. And he outlines very succinctly and very specifically some of the welfare benefits that rich people and corporations are entitled to in this country. And he talks about state and local subsidies to corporations. We've heard about these extensively, countless big corporations that pay no effective tax at all. We've talked about direct federal subsidies to corporations. The Cato Institute estimates that federal subsidies cost taxpayers around $100 billion every year. Federal tax breaks for corporations, federal tax breaks, listen to this, for wealthy hedge fund managers, which allow them to pay only a 15% rate, while the people they earned the money for usually pay something like 35% on their earnings. Subsidies for the fast food industry, mortgage deduction, which is, of course, something that costs taxpayers $70 billion and is skewed significantly towards wealthier individuals who own property. Billions that are involved in the bailout of Wall Street. Major pieces of legislation containing new welfare, for example, the emergency tax legislation passed by Congress in early 2013. Huge corporations that are basically allowed to do things that are illegal, but there is a blind eye turned to them, as we see very few people ever prosecuted for Wall Street type high level fraud, corruption, and crime. And then all of these tiny little tax breaks and extra things that are available, subsidies for corporate jets. Talk about something that really is just for the wealthy. And the funny thing, Lewis, is, are we drug testing as a matter of policy big corporations and rich people before giving them these welfare benefits? No, we're not. Are we saying that these welfare benefits are hurting the economy because they are pointless spending? No. Are we saying the recipients are lazy and saying, why do they deserve a tax break on the corporate jet? We're not saying that. And the bottom line also, when we think about the economic effect, is a tax break on a private jet as stimulative as putting that same amount of money into food stamps? Obviously not. What should we be calling this, Lewis? Maybe welfare?
Oh, that's a pretty good one. Yeah, I just like corporate welfare too. That's got a nice ring to it. I can't even fathom the amount of money that we would, I don't know, save, I guess, if these corporations and these wealthy people were taxed in a way that makes sense. I think our financial woes would be pretty minimal.
And there's no reason to drug test any of them because, of course, really rich people with access to whatever they want, they never use drugs, Lewis, do they?
I think it'd be a pretty shocking amount of cocaine abuse that you'd discover if you were to start drug testing all those banksters.
Anthony sent me a story via Yahoo News about a man who was handcuffed and detained by police for an hour after giving 75 cents in coins to a homeless person. Greg Snyder was in a Houston, Texas parking lot. He was on the phone making a business call, and while he was just in the parking lot, a homeless man came up to his car and asked him for some change. Snyder gave the man 75 cents and then drove away. When he pulled onto the nearby highway, police pulled him over. He was surprised at the level of aggression from the police officer, according to what he told KPRC. He's screaming, he's yelling, he's telling me to get out of the car. He's telling me to put my hands on the hood. They're like, we saw you downtown. We know what you did. And I was like, are you kidding me? I gave a homeless man 75 cents. Gets dragged out of the car, handcuffed. And then police say, you gave the homeless man drugs. Of course, he didn't. He gave the man 75 cents in coins. 10 police cars show up. They do a full search of his vehicle for drugs. They, of course, find absolutely no drugs. He claims that the police also damaged his car, ripping it apart to find the drugs that, of course, were not there, and also alleges that police were laughing about the mistake and laughing about the damage done to his car. Police, Lewis, are not commenting about this incident. What's hard to decipher about this, Lewis, is whether police are doing this because of their fixation with the war on drugs and what they believe drugs do to society. Somehow I find that a little bit hard to believe. Is it because of the kind of police state type situation that has come up based on latitude in terms of searches and seizures and warrantless searches that police do? What is this really about?
Honestly, I think this is about some cop who thought he saw a drug transaction and thought to himself, oh, you're going to sell drugs in my city? Oh, I'll show you. I think it's really that simple. I don't know if he even thinks about the war on drugs when something like this happens.
Yeah, and I think you never know when it's going to go well and when it's not going to go well, but this is one of those times where you really want to do everything you can to assert your rights and not speak to police at all. Say nothing unless there is a lawyer there. Say, am I being detained? And otherwise, am I free to go? However, if the police think they've actually seen you, observed you giving drugs to someone, that, at least in the short term, may count as probable cause. And even asserting your basic rights and not consenting to searches, it might actually lead to you getting beat up.
Yeah, there's a good chance of that. And who just walks around like handing out drugs? That seems kind of strange too.
Yeah, unless you believe that this was literally a drug deal, who would randomly hand drugs to a panhandler? That just none of this makes any sense at all. What makes a lot of sense is this program expanding to 5 days a week, and we have an Indiegogo campaign right now that we are running. It ends in February, and we are asking for your support to expand the program to 5 days a week. If you like the show, it probably logically follows that you would like more of it. So help us reach $3,500 by the end of tonight, by midnight tonight in our Indiegogo campaign. Thanks to some recent funders like Fernando, Thor, Barbara, and Travis, Dina Sewell, Kevin, Mitchell, Germain. We are approaching the $3,000 mark. We're just a few dollars away from that. And it would be really great if we can get to 3,500 tonight. We'll read some of today's donors' names on tomorrow's show. Let's keep it going. Go to our website, davidpakman.com, and click on the blue banner at the top of the page. It takes you to the Indiegogo campaign. We have such an extensive list of very cool perks available for contributors, so please check it out. Help us expand the show. Phyllis Schlafly, conservative activist, will be on the show today. I predict it will be compelling for any number of reasons, Lewis. Stay with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Liberal Bias, the more you look for it, the more you find it. And you can find it in some pretty unexpected places at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Rukti Fakra. Rukti Fakra, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Join Rukti at davidpakman.com/membership, as members are our primary source of funding for this show. You can also support us by doing your Amazon shopping through the Amazon banner at davidpakman.com. Click it and just do your shopping, and Amazon sends us a kickback. We like to talk about some of the interesting items that are purchased through our link once a week. First of all, thanks to everybody who has been buying their college textbooks. I do feel, on one hand, completely outraged by the cost of college textbooks at this point. $200 books, Lewis. It's completely absurd. But if you have to buy those books, at least you are helping to support the show by buying outrageously overpriced books through our link. Also, whoever bought the book, Introductory Chemical Engineering Thermodynamics, good luck in class. I do wish you luck. This is something interesting, Lewis. A couple people bought this silver protocol stuff. It's like a silver supplement. And of course, it does say when you buy it, pregnant women shouldn't have this, and there's some other people. I thought that there were huge problems with the taking silver and that it's been debunked as potentially healthy and that it can really cause some pretty serious health issues.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. I don't know if there has been any follow-up research, but yeah, apparently it's still available. Just be careful, I guess.
Absolutely. So remember, bookmark and use the link to Amazon on our website to support our program. I do need to issue a clarification. Last week, when talking about the ethics of choosing the smartest embryo for pregnancy, I used the term illegitimate children when talking about the results from a study done by the company BGI. And I got 2 or 3 emails from people saying, that's really an offensive term. You shouldn't use the term illegitimate children. I want to make completely clear that that was not our term. We were reading the results of a survey done by BGI's Cognitive Genomics Unit, and that is not a term that we use. I should have clarified, though, and said something like, what is described in BGI's research as illegitimate children, just to be absolutely clear. It's not a term we use. I find it to be a term that is both not particularly meaningful and offensive as well. And there are no children that are illegitimate. That's just absurd. So just to be completely clear, we were using someone else's vocabulary, and to change it wouldn't have been accurate. I should have made that clear. Let's talk about spousal rape. Heather sent us this story via Mother Jones about Virginia State Senator Richard H. Black. He goes by Dick Black, which, I don't know, it seems to be ironic or absurd given the content of the story. Dick Black doesn't think spousal rape should be a crime. This is Virginia State Senator, and he actually invited a reporter to watch violent rape porn once on a library computer. And he's in a congressional district in Northern Virginia where he's running a Republican primary to replace longtime Republican moderate Frank Wolf, who's retiring. And as a state legislator, he opposed making spousal rape a crime. He says it just seems impossible to convict a husband of that because when they're living together, sleeping in the same bed, she's in a nightie and so forth. And I guess the obvious conclusion that spousal rape is not something we can really convict a husband of. He just said that's why I'm against it. He's also referred to emergency contraception, which is not an abortion, as baby pesticide. He also didn't want a statue of Abraham Lincoln at a former Confederate site in Richmond because he wasn't sure that the statues of Lincoln belonged in Virginia. He's argued that abortion is worse than slavery, and they have that. So, okay. He also once wanted to demonstrate why libraries should block porn on their computers. So to do that, he invited a TV reporter to watch rape porn with him at a library. Sounds like a hell of a guy, Lewis. Now, ultimately, according to his staff, his campaign aide said, his concern over the spousal rape thing was that innocent people were going to be prosecuted, and he did end up ultimately voting for the bill, even though we don't know that, Lewis, because in Virginia, according to the law, you don't know exactly how each member votes. So maybe because of bad PR, that was the statement that was put out. What do you think of Dick Black's point of view?
I think it's incredibly misogynistic, to say the least.
On one hand, there's the absurdity of what he's saying. And on the other hand, there's the idea that he's only talking about men raping women, right? His concern is only about innocent men being prosecuted for not actually raping their wives, which also furthers the problematic stereotypes around sexual assault.
Right. Yeah. It seems that Will has commented about it. It's nighttime. She's in a nightie.
Right.
It kind of goes along the same lines as, oh, well, this girl was dressed like a slut, so that's why she got raped.
There's also the blaming the victim. There's both the misogynistic element and there's also the blaming the victim element within it. He's really hitting all the marks when opposing this. And, I guess maybe we'll never know exactly how he did vote. Greg sent me an interesting story about a principal who suspended a student for his gay porn filmography. And now that suspension is going to prevent the student from graduating. And according to an agitated poster in a subreddit of the Reddit website, high school senior and Sean Cody model Noel, is it pronounced Noel or Noel? I think it's Noel. Noel is with LLE at the end. Noel is just Noel, right?
I'm not sure.
I feel like if I were Christian, I would know the answer to this. Anyway, he's been suspended and he's not going to graduate this year after several of his porn movies found their way onto the principal's desk. I find that line a little bit funny. All of a sudden, there's gay porn on the principal's desk. The poster identified himself as a cousin of Noel's classmate, and he says that the budding gay porn model has been severely bullied since fellow classmates discovered that he had this side job where he is doing gay porn. School administrators, instead of helping to stop the bullying, have instead suspended him for 10 days for causing a campus disturbance. His suspension will allegedly lead to an automatic failure from the number of absences. He won't be able to graduate come June. This is an interesting story because the first thing I thought of is actually mentioned in the article on Queerty, which is the school may or may not be able to punish people for what they do outside of school, right? Certainly, it would seem logical that if someone is convicted or even accused while the trial is going on of an actual crime outside of school, the school could say, because you've been convicted or until you are exonerated, we're suspending you because this is a criminal act. However, this was not a criminal act. This was simply being in movies. And if it can be up to the principal's personal convictions to say what is okay or what is not okay, assuming it is legal for students to do outside of school, where do you draw the line, Lewis? What if Noel was in, I don't know, an NC-17 movie that has simulated gay sex and real kissing of another man? What if the principal said that, no, that created a campus disturbance? Or what if it's an NC-17 movie where he has simulated sex with a woman? Or what about a rated R movie with drug usage or whatever the case may be? I just find this to be completely arbitrary and capricious, and it's opening up a really ridiculous door to go down.
Oh yeah, it's totally vague. Creating a campus disturbance, it's completely subjective, and I don't know. The rules have to change. Clearly, there has to be less gray area, and this should be clearly defined.
And to be completely clear, this is a public school. This is not, Brigham Young University, for example, has this conscience clause where you say you won't have sex before you're married, right? And you're not breaking any law, but it's a private school. Conceivably, the school can kick you out because you've agreed to follow their guidelines. This is a public school. No laws were broken. And it seems like we are opening up this completely absurd gray area that makes no sense at all. Let's take a break. Please check out our Indiegogo campaign to expand the show to 5 days a week. Go to davidpakman.com. Bright blue banner at the top of the page will get you where you need to be. Next, I will interview conservative magnate, conservative activist Phyllis Schlafly. The topics will be welfare and the minimum wage. I'm looking forward to it.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined today by Phyllis Schlafly. She is an American constitutional lawyer, a conservative activist, an author, and also founder of the Eagle Forum. Ms. Schlafly, a pleasure to have you as always. I want to talk today about welfare and about the minimum wage, and I think maybe a good place to start is to get your assessment of how big you feel the amount of welfare benefits in this country is. How big of a thing is that?
Well, are you sitting down?
I'm sitting.
It's nearly $1 trillion a year.
$1 trillion.
And there are 79 different federal programs handing out cash or benefits, and they're going to nearly half of the American people. And I think one of the purposes of why I'm bringing this up is for people to understand what we talk about as our hidden welfare program. It is hidden. Nobody knows there's 75. When they talk about welfare, most people just need the one of the 79, which is called TANF. You probably know what those initials stand for, temporary relief or whatever. But that's only one of 79. They get food stamps, they get housing benefits, they get child care, they get EITC, which we now know is ridden with fraud. And there are all sorts of benefits, cash benefits, which incidentally are not taxed. They're not counted in whether you meet the poverty level or whether you pay income tax or not. And I think it's very important to get these issues out on the table so people understand where their money is going.
I think it is important. And, I didn't expect to necessarily kind of get bogged down in the numbers, but I think I would be doing a disservice to the audience if I didn't kind of counter the idea that $1 trillion is the right number. And respectfully, Ms. Schlafly, I've researched this in detail, and it seems to me that the trillion number has been one that has become a favorite distortion of those who are against these programs. And I'll explain and give you an opportunity to tell me if you disagree. If we really look at actual welfare programs, I think that in that we really include, as you mentioned, the Earned Income Tax Credit. We look at temporary assistance to needy families, SSI, food stamps, housing vouchers, and the child tax credit. That's $212 billion. A lot of the things that individuals on the right are including in that $1 trillion number are not really welfare. For example, the cost of adoption services. That it's not fair to say that that is welfare. Title I grants, Head Start. That number has been drastically over-exaggerated.
Well, I would challenge you on Head Start, because now even the government's report has shown that it's a failure, because all of the so-called alleged good effects are gone by the end of kindergarten.
But that's a different issue. Whether or not it's an effective program is separate from whether we call it welfare or not. And widely speaking, we can't really call Head Start welfare. A different conversation is whether we think it's a good program or not.
Well, we can call it cash or benefit handouts to a large percentage of our population based on their estimated poverty level, which is a level set by the government.
Oh, certainly we can kind of wordsmith it, but I think as we move forward, I'll at least make it clear to my audience that I completely disagree with the $1 trillion characterization, and I've gone into it in detail. However, this is the really interesting thing, Ms. Schlafly. Even though you've not been over the last many years an advocate of increasing the minimum wage, from what I've read, you're not totally opposed to it because you think that it may actually allow us to reduce the amount of welfare benefits that are paid out. Am I characterizing that properly?
Well, I think I would say I'm floating this as an idea.
Okay.
Because I think people do not realize the extent and the amount of the cash and benefits that flow tax-free to such a large percentage of population. That's why some people refer to it, and Robert Rector, who's the authority on this subject, refers to it as a hidden welfare.
Well, yeah.
So that's one thing that needs to get out on the table. And the other thing is the immense amount of fraud in it, particularly in EITC, which is a program that's been supported by both Republicans and Democrats.
No, you mentioned that, but specifically my question was, it seems like you're taking what is actually a pretty progressive and liberal position, which is if we do increase the minimum wage and elevate the wage that those who earn the least are taking in on a monthly or yearly basis, it will actually be fiscally conservative in the sense that by pulling people out of poverty, we will reduce the amount of government benefits paid. It sounds like you're coming very close to that assessment.
Well, it ought to. I can't predict. Chances are they may move the minimum wage line. They may find ways to hand out the money anyway. But it ought to. If your income increases, you should be entitled to fewer cash-free benefits.
Absolutely. So in other words, you're agreeing that it would be a favorable result to the conservatives that typically oppose increases to the minimum wage, because if you do increase it, the government would reduce the amount of so-called welfare benefits paid. I'm surprised you've come to this realization, but so many of your cohorts on the right don't seem to understand this fundamental principle.
Well, that's why I wrote the column.
Well, good.
And I cannot predict that the Obama administration is going to allow reduction of any benefits. I am not a predictor. However, the arithmetic shows that if you raise the legitimate income,
right,
you should be reducing the government handouts.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
It should be an arithmetic problem, but of course it will become very political.
Well, we're agreeing quite a bit here, Ms. Schlafly. Let me follow up and see if we can even further our agreement. Do you agree that when we look at the stimulative effect of different government spending, so if we compare, for example, tax cuts for the richest Americans versus government spending on food stamps, do you agree with all of the research that shows that food stamps have a far higher multiplier effect in the economy than, for example, the same amount of money going to a tax cut for wealthy Americans, most of which is just saved and doesn't stimulate the economy? Do we agree on that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
In other words, let me reframe it. If the government spends $10 million on food stamps, that $10 million is absolutely going to be put back into the economy. The grocery stores will get some of that money. The food growers who supply the grocery stores get some of that money.
That's true.
It's very stimulative. However, if we compare that with a $10 million tax cut for the wealthiest Americans, 2/3 or more of that $10 million gets socked away in bank accounts, not stimulating the economy.
Well, I'm sure that's true.
So you agree that food stamp spending is far more stimulative than tax cuts for the rich?
Well, for people who count our our economy by the amount of money that people spend, that would be true.
Wow, I have to tell you, Ms. Schlafly, this is so different than the last time you were on our program talking about immigration. We're finding so many agreements. I feel like your economic points of view are becoming more and more progressive these days.
I don't know about that.
Well, I call it like I see it. Okay, well, we've been speaking with Phyllis Schlafly. She is an American constitutional lawyer, conservative activist, although she's sounding very progressive to me, and also founder of the Eagle Forum. Ms. Schlafly, always a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you. You have a good day, and my website is eagleforum.org.
Okay, we will visit it. Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
2 children are dead after a 28-year-old mother killed them and severely injured 2 other children during a botched exorcism attempt. I'll comment about whether that's even a fair term, a botched exorcism. This is being reported in the New York Daily News. Police described a horrifically bloody scene at the Germantown home Friday morning when they found a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old dead in a home due to multiple stab wounds. There were also a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old that were injured and are receiving medical treatment, according to Montgomery police. Police announced that the mother, Zakiya Latrice Avery, and another woman, Monifa Denise Sanford, were trying to perform an exorcism on the children. They were both charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Sanford was also injured at the home and was treated at a local hospital. I don't know how this other woman was also injured trying to exorcise the demons out of 4 children. Avery was not injured. There were no other details released. This is just incredible. The women refused to talk to the police when they approached their door. I take issue with the term botched exorcism because it implies that there's a correct way to exorcise demons from babies.
Right. It seems like that term shouldn't exist, really. I would like to make the argument that had these women never been told about a Bible or demons or that exorcism is even a thing, that perhaps this never would have been attempted and these children might not have been stabbed to death.
It's possible. Others would argue that if it were not under the guise of a religious exorcism, that they would have found a different way to kill their kids because of mental illness. The thing is that if I really am honest with myself and with you, and I think about it, thinking rationally in a kind of evidence-based way, how can we really say that believing demons are possessing your children makes you crazy, but believing in virgin births and talking snakes or Xenu or whatever is okay and logical and needs to be respected as a religious belief? You could argue that one caused real world violence and the other didn't, but there are plenty of examples where just literal biblical beliefs have caused real world violence. I really have a hard time defending one and criticizing the other. I just do.
Yeah, it's tough because, this is why education and knowledge and information is so important, a proper education. People used to think that the earth was flat.
Right.
Of course, if someone tells you that now and stands by it, you think there's something wrong with them.
What about, Lewis, as we move on here, turning the ashes of a deceased relative into diamonds? This was a story on NPR. And it is incredible. There's a Swiss company called Algordanza, which takes cremated human remains and under very high heat and very high pressure that mimic the conditions deep within the earth that create diamonds, compresses the human remains into diamonds. Rinaldo Willi is the company's founder and CEO. He says he came up with this idea about 10 years ago and that his customer base now reaches 24 countries. He says every year they take the remains of 800 to 900 people, and 3 months later, they exit as diamonds to be kept in a box or turned into jewelry. He says most of the stones come out blue, because of trace amounts of boron in the human body. Although occasionally one will come out yellow or gray or black, most of the people are being delivered, the remains are being delivered by relatives of the deceased. What do you think about this? It costs $5,000 to $22,000. It costs as much as some funerals. And this is the same laboratory process that is used to create synthetic diamonds. It basically reduces the ash into carbon and then applies intense heat and pressure for weeks. And then you basically have something that closely resembles a diamond. Most of the time, according to Willie, people take the diamonds to jewelers and then they make it into like a ring or a pendant that you can actually physically wear.
Yeah, I think it's kind of creepy and it's pretty pricey, but it makes much more sense than burying people, which eventually, due to the population increases, will just be impractical. But also, as I've said before, I find something appealing about being buried and returning to the earth, yada, yada, yada. So I don't know. If it makes people happy, good. This
Right.
is
Well,
great.
that's the question. Is it just another way for people to deal with the kind of fear of or uncertainty around death? Either if you are the one having this done to your relative or if you sign up to have this done to yourself when you pass away. It really changes the meaning of the term family jewels, though, doesn't it?
It really does. And you know what? This is a much better way to get diamonds than those blood diamonds or conflict diamonds, right?
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's an industry that I want nothing to do with. Let's go to your voicemail and email. I got an email from Wendy. I can't tell if this is a positive email or not. It's very funny. Wendy says, I truly enjoy your show and am a member. I have been a lifelong insomnia sufferer and discovered that I can listen to your show on a loop at night and I no longer have to take Ambien to fall asleep. I know that sounds insulting, but there is something about your voice that is very soothing. It has changed my life, and I wanted to let you know in case you want to branch out into sleeping aids or something like that. Looking forward to 5 shows a week. Lewis, is this an offensive email or is it a positive one? I can't tell.
I think it's a positive email, David. I'm also pretty sure I heard my grandmother once tell me that the show helps her fall asleep when she would hear it at 3 a.m. back in our hometown. So I guess it's positive.
Okay, well, thanks, Wendy. And then here's a voicemail. This is related to, well, I won't even introduce it. Let's just listen.
Hey, guys, this is Joe from Connecticut. I'm calling about yesterday's members-only show. I absolutely agree with banning children from nice restaurants. I'm a father of 2. There's no way I would bring my own children to a nice restaurant. They're awful people. They scream, they cry, they throw stuff. I love them to death, but I would not torture other civilized people with my ruthless family. Great job, guys. Love your show.
Yeah, this was a big controversial discussion on a bonus show last week where Lewis talked about a restaurant that was banning children from going at night, or even just from going at all, I think it was. I don't remember now. A lot of people, surprisingly, did not find it an offensive idea, saying there are lots of restaurants where children are allowed. If you're going to an expensive restaurant, it's perfectly reasonable to expect the atmosphere is part of what you're paying for, and screaming children at an 8 o'clock dinner reservation is just not part of that. And even parents, Lewis, like this caller, kind of agreeing with you.
Yeah, I love it. Let's start up a group or something. Let's get this going.
Yeah, well, we know last time I made a comment about a child that I thought maybe was too old to be breastfed on an airplane. All of a sudden, there were multiple interest groups calling for my resignation from my own show, by the way. Imagine if I resigned from this show. Who would host it? I mean, it obviously made no sense. But in any case, we have to be careful when talking about children, but even parents, very supportive. Hey, it's okay. No children at all restaurants. It's okay. All right, the Indiegogo campaign continues. Go to davidpakman.com, click on the blue banner at the top of the page, check out the campaign, and become a member at davidpakman.com/membership. One of the great benefits is access to the bonus show. Today, we will talk about an endangered rhino auction follow-up. Also, a quarterback's wife leaves an assault rifle in her rental car, and an offer from Japan to loan the U.S. some money. But would the U.S. ever really accept that? We'll talk about that and much more on today's bonus show. Go to davidpakman.com/membership. You fund this program, you make it possible. Check that out.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.